Hey everyone, it's Zara, and I am back to film my flip through for my 2026 reading journal. So we'll just dive in. I am using a Happy Planner monthly layout again. I've previously used this for the last 2 or 3 years for my reading journal, and I really enjoy a lot of elements from this type of planner. I will say this year I was a little disappointed because the Happy Planner only had a big version of this planner, which is just larger. It's like the size of a sheet of paper versus this is, I think, like 7 by 9 roughly. And I just didn't need that big of a planner. Also, too, just stylistically, I can't remember what the theming was, but I don't remember if the theme was even something I would have gravitated towards anyways. So I ended up doing a custom planner with the monthly layout. I really debated going to a different planner completely. I know Kell of a Plan had a reading journal. I think Wrong had a reading journal. The problem I had with a lot of those types of reading journals is that they're very stylistically bright or bold or very themed to one specific theme, like dark academia, or Kell of a Plans is like, bright blues and teals and greens and things like that, purple. And I like to be able to customize it to what I want. I like having a neutral backdrop in which to do my reading journal. So for me, that was a turnoff to some of those planners. I almost bought the Kell of a Plan one though, because I think I could have been okay with it because there were a number of colors that I could have alternated through. But, I also like the way I have my reading journal set up. And so there were certain things that I wasn't sure how to make my own in that reading journal. So, anyways, a long build up to say that I spent more on this planner than I really wanted to because it was a custom planner and because they don't apply a lot of sales or anything like that. And so that kind of made me mad. But all in all, it looks good when it's all together. So it'll be fine. But I just wish they would have had more options like they've had in the past. I feel like they're kind of getting rid of this layout or, just offering it in a very specific way, which is a bummer. I don't typically do anything with these pages, and I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to use these pages. In the past, I've used it for a couple of different things. I've used this as a way to track amount of time spent reading. I've seen people use this to track how many pages they read each day. I've seen people, or I've used this where I'd write down the book title on the day I started it, and then I'd arrow down to whatever day I finished it. But that got to be messy when I was reading multiple books at a time, and, it's a little bit harder to keep all the arrows straight and keep it looking nice. It's a little bit better if you're a linear one book at a time reader, in my opinion. So I'm not sure how or if I will use these pages just because the tracking amount of time spent reading each day started to not serve me as well, or I would get to the end of the month and I wouldn't have filled out the entire month. And so then I was basically guessing on how much time I spent reading each day, which wasn't really helpful for me. So I was just filling it out to fill it out. Then I use this page. This is kind of the currently page where I'll put down what was my favorite book. I'll put down the number of pages I read, the number of books I read, and then I've never used this third section for the last couple of years, but I was thinking this year I might use it for an average rating, just to kind of add one more statistic. This year I downloaded a couple of different reading apps. Previously I've only been using Goodreads, but this year I downloaded Fable and Storygraph. So I'm going to try using all three of those this year to track my reading. And I think they give you more statistics and, kind of data about your reading. So I'm interested to see how that changes, I don't know, what I'm tracking in my reading. And then down here is I'll put down all of the book covers. So if I read 8 books, I'll put all 8 book covers down here as a visual, kind of storyboard, vision board for what I read in the whole month of January. Then getting into the monthly pages itself, I will use this to track when I started and finished things, just because then I think visually it's interesting to see when I started or finished most books based on my work schedule, or if I was on vacation or family was in town and we were busy. It's kind of interesting to see if I read more at the beginning and middle of the month, the start of the week, the end of the week, etc. Then I have some little sticky notes here because I'm trying to brainstorm different ways to utilize these pages better. This is one of my favorite parts of the monthly layout, is these monthly trackers. So I like to read or mark down what format I was reading. So was I reading a Kindle format, a physical book, or an audiobook? Because I'll often jump around. I'll often have, a Kindle book and an audiobook going at the same time, just depending on if I'm reading in bed or if I'm listening to an audiobook while I'm cleaning. I often have different formats going at different times, just because, then I read more ultimately versus not reading at all, because I don't want to start a physical book when I have the time for it, or etc., because I'm in the middle of an audiobook. I use this section up here. I've been pulling a quote, not necessarily like a favorite quote or a memorable quote from something I read that month. Up here in this section, I've tried to use this in the past for marking down like new releases. So saying, in January, I'm interested in reading these new releases. But as it got later in the month or in the year, I just didn't find myself being akin to what was coming out. And also to just, I wasn't buying a lot of new releases, so the new releases didn't really matter to me. I did think about using this to track like monthly goals. So reading each day, what book of the month I selected and did I read it in that month, and then having a goal of I want to read 8 books this month or 7 books a month, kind of similar to what I was doing down in this top priority section in 2025 for like my top goals for the month, basically moving them up here. And then using this section instead for like 3 books I want to focus on for my TBR. So for example, maybe I really want to read Pride and Prejudice this year, and in January I decide that that's a book that I'm going to read. Maybe it fits a monthly challenge that I'm trying to do, or maybe I'm just in the mood to read that book this year, or this month. And so using this as like a top TBR, like what 3 books do I most want to read this month? Then I use this space here to mark every book that I've been reading in the month. So I'll write it in there when I start it, and then I'll check it off when I finish it. And every now and then oftentimes I'll end up with a book that I don't finish in that particular month, and I carry it forward into the next month. So then that'll be the top of the next list. But that just kind of keeps a track of what I'm reading and, kind of quantifying how many books I've read so far that month. And then down in this note to self section, again, just brainstorming different ways I could use it. I thought about using this one maybe for new releases or book club picks. I have a local bookstore that does a book club every month. Maybe they have a couple of different book clubs, like they have a romance book club, banned books, etc. And so I thought about maybe putting some of these in here, just new releases, book clubs. The library does a book club every now and then, or like a library big read. And so, you know, marking down things like that. Also, too, if I'm marking it down in advance, then I could look forward to what book club book is happening in March. So I could better plan on renting it from the library or buying the book when I'm at the bookstore or things like that. So that's a potential way I might be using this section. I haven't thought about what I would use this for. Sometimes I use it as an extension if I read more than 10 books. Sometimes I also extend it down in this section. So I'm not sure what this will be used for. I could use it for more quotes if I have more that stuck with me, or I could just use it for decoration. Not 100% sure on that. And then I use this bingo section. I drew out this bingo board, and this is just for marking down different challenges from the back of my planner. So pop sugar challenges, the buzzword challenge, and I can pull prompts that I want to focus on this month, or that, you know, I think I would be reading something that might work for it. And then again, it just helps me focus on what challenges I want to complete or want to mark off here. Then I have these notes sections, which I believe there's a section for theoretically each day of the month. I've used these previously for planning out the challenges. So if I'm trying to read a book with a red cover, then I could have a book with a red cover, and then I could list out like 3 books on my TBR that have a predominantly red cover. And then, you know, when I, you know, am ready for my next book, then I could see which is available from the library or which I have on my bookshelf readily available, and, you know, focus on that. So I could use that for these. I also thought about using this as, you know, marking down what books I was reading, because maybe I read 2 audiobooks in a day, or I was, you know, finished one, started another. So perhaps using it to mark titles of books that I'm reading each day. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I haven't been utilizing these as efficiently as I should be, or as I want to. So I need to figure out exactly how I want to use them going forward, but either for reading challenge, notes, or, you know, for daily logs. And then it just repeats through all of the months of the year. And then we get to my next section. So I did order, these are dividers. They're clear dividers from Live Love Posh. I wanted the ones with the tabs on the side, but they were sold out. So I picked the ones with the tabs on the top, which is fine. I have not labeled them yet, but I do have stickers that can go with them if I choose to. And this essentially just divides out all of my, you know, yearly trackers, my book challenges, my bingos, things like that. So the first section here are kind of my yearly trackers in terms of, you know, how many books I'm reading, like my bookshelf stickers, things like that. So for the last, I think 3 years, I've had a what was it? I had a Goodreads tracker from the Shelfie Chronicles, but she shut down shop just over a year ago. And so I had purchased for my 2025 planner, but I didn't purchase further ahead than that. And I made my own. So essentially how I've been using this is, here, I'll just pull over my 2025 journal. So how I've been using this is just putting down a sticker to say I read an audiobook or a Kindle book or a physical book, and then I have this nice little rainbow pattern, which has been very aesthetically pleasing. Again, these stickers are also from the Shelfie Chronicles, who is no longer open, and so I'm not sure, I definitely don't have enough of these rainbow stickers left to continue to do this beautiful rainbow pattern that I've done the last few years. And I don't have enough neutral stickers or black and white stickers to do it that way. So I'm debating just writing A for audiobook, you know, P or B for physical book, K for Kindle book. And then I also thought there's times when I read, you know, a Kindle book and then I pick up the audiobook, or I go back and forth between a physical book and an audiobook, depending on, again, what I have time to read or how I want to read things. So I also thought I could track, if I read it in multiple formats, I could do, you know, a slash and just say like KB or KA. So again, I needed to adjust this because of the availability of stickers, and that's how I think I'm going to use it. And then I also changed it to a format tracker because I am using more reading apps this year, and you know, Goodreads tracker isn't necessarily how I use it. So I thought format made sense because I'm tracking if it was a physical book, a Kindle book, or an audiobook. And then I have enough space here. This is 75. My goal for this year is 90 books. 100 would be great, but I've read 90 this year and then 92 in 2024. So I've been around that 90 mark for a little bit here. I previously read over 100 in 2023, but I have enough for at least 90 or even 100. Then I have my monthly review sheet. This is from Plan with Elise, and I like this just to mark down. I'll mark down how many pages I read and how many books I read, so then I can compare them all to other months. I love this. I'm going to keep going with it. It's one of my favorite pages. I did think about putting in, I printed off a second copy of this because I did think that perhaps it could be interesting to do a second monthly review where I put my favorite book of the month in these squares, and then at the end of the year pick a book of the year. But I'm not 100% sure if I'll do that or not, but it is a possible idea. Then I have a bookshelf tracker. This is from JoJo's Pretty Paper Shop, as well as this little 2026 sticker. I last year did it where I colored in each book to match what month I read the book in, but I ended up not liking that as the year went on because the colors, I just didn't plan for the colors to all go together, and it just looked a little bit haphazard by the end of the year. So this year I think I might write the names of the books in as I read them, and or color it in kind of like a gray or a neutral color, and just track it as, yeah, the individual books, not necessarily what month I read the book in. I do like that idea, but unless you have a lot of colors that look good together and really plan it out, I feel like it's a little bit too much for my brain to think about right now. Then I have a reading 100 books tracker from Plan with Elise, and I just colored in the number as I read a book, and so I liked keeping track of what I was reading in the year that way as well. Then I get into my next section, which is where I do all of my individual book reviews. So again, these are from Plan with Elise as well. I've been using them for years and I really like the way that they all fit together. And ultimately, if I ever decide to get rid of my larger journals, I could always pull each year and put just these into my own reading journal, like a different reading journal. So I like that they're consistent throughout the years. I also like how much space there is to write, because I just need to jot down a couple of quick notes about individual books. I don't need to have like a whole page per book, which some reading journals do. I just don't want to write down that much. I'm not great about writing reviews on Goodreads either, and I feel like if I was better at doing that, then I could just, you know, kind of like write my review longhand into a journal as well. But I'm not great about that. It'd be nice to perhaps write more of a review online in the future, but yeah. Anyways, this is just how I like to track my individual books and my star ratings, genre, started, finished, etc. So I have plenty here just to get started, and I can always print more if I need to at the end of the year. So then my third section are all of my challenges. So these are all challenges put on by other people. The buzzword challenge is a big one that Books and Lala puts on. I like this one because it has one prompt, one challenge per month. And so I think that's really attainable. Some yearly challenges that are 50 plus prompts are fun, but they're not always attainable, or you kind of get some off the wall prompts and then I don't really want to read them. But I feel like a one a month is just a really sweet spot. And sometimes I don't finish a prompt in the month that I was supposed to, and that's fine. If I finish it in a different month, usually it's after the month has passed. I don't usually look ahead to do like groups and clubs in January, but theoretically you could. There's no rules saying that you can't do it that way. This is just how she has it arranged. So, for example, in January, I need to read a book that has before or after in the title. Then I have the buzzword cover challenge, which is images or graphics on the cover that fit the prompt. So for January, it's an internal body part like a bone or a heart, something like that. Then next up, I have the Pop Sugar 2026 challenge. I have traditionally done the Pop Sugar challenge just because a lot of like planner sticker makers make different or have made stickers for this challenge in the past, and I've bought stickers for this challenge in the past since it's one of the bigger ones. I will say, as I was writing down the prompts and making my own graphic for it, because I didn't want to buy the stickers, there were a lot of prompts that I don't really feel that interested in. I don't know if I'm going to continue doing the Pop Sugar in 2027 and beyond. I might find a different reading challenge. But I don't know. For this year, I still included it because I had already made all these pages as I started writing them down and was questioning my choices. But again, just different ways to track. Like I said, I'm not going to finish this one, I'm sure, but it's just a good way to, I don't know, try to read something outside of the box. Or when I finish a book and then I can look through and say, oh yeah, it fits this prompt. It feels like I'm checking something off, which I appreciate. Then I have the Harry Potter and the Order of the Planners Facebook group challenge, which is the sorting challenge. So each house has their own prompts, and you could either do all of them, or you could do just for your house, or you could do a little of everything. I, again, don't always finish this in its entirety, but I usually get pretty close because I think the prompts are, not to say simpler, but I think they're easier to find books that match them. Like a weapon on the cover, a brave character, a red cover. I mean, those are a little bit simpler than, I don't know, featuring birding. I don't know that I'm gonna find a book about birds. Then we have the alphabet challenge. Again, I just made my own for this. In years past, I've been using stickers, but this year I just was doing it easy peasy on my own. I think you could also get a printable as well. I'm sure there's a lot of shops that make them, but I'll just write in as I read, a book that starts with an A, I'll write it in and cross it off. Then for the rainbow challenge, I did dig through my sticker collection. I found different boxes from Mojo Jojo Plans to make a rainbow challenge, page. So basically matching a book to the cover of the different boxes. So, a bright yellow, a light pink, black, etc. Then my last thing I have is my book bingo. I still need to go through and fill this out, but I just figured I'd film this first since I need to brainstorm what I want to put in here. But essentially I'm just trying to pull different challenges or I don't know, think about different books on my shelf that I want to read. So, for example, last year, this was my book bingo. I had like a 2025 release. I had an awards winner. I didn't read that one. I'm currently reading all of the Hercule Poirot books, so I wanted to put that on my book bingo. I also had a baby last year, so I had some that were like baby related, finishing a series. I have dogs, things that kind of relate to me, and I enjoy doing things like that, or kind of getting creative and making my own challenge, essentially, with prompts that relate to me. So I will do that again. This was from Plan with Elise, if I didn't say that already. And then the last thing in the final tab of my journal is my 26 and 26 list. These are 26 books that are on my TBR that I want to read in 2026. I did not accomplish my 25 and 25 list. I think I just kind of let the year get away from me. At the beginning of the year, it didn't seem like if I didn't read a book off the list, it wasn't a big deal because I still had plenty of time. And then as the end of the year came up, I just ran out of time and, availability of the books. If I wanted to listen to it as an audiobook, I was on big wait lists and things like that. So, just not something that I completed, but I'm hoping to do a better job in 26. Again, probably pulling, let's see, there's 26. So at least 2 to 3, per month, pulling and, trying to read. So putting that in my, top TBR selections, I think is a good idea. At least pulling one per list, or one per month into that section, things like that. So I have the first half of this list are all carryover from my 2025 list, minus one that I just decided I didn't want to read anymore. And then I have more down here. So for example, Defiant is the last book in a series I want to read. Kingdom of Ash, I'm not at that book yet. That's the final book in the Throne of Glass series, but I'm on book like 4. So I have 3 more books till, or 2 more till I get to the Kingdom of Ash. But I want to finish that series, so I put the final book on my 26 and 26 list. Then I also just have some new additions, things I got for Christmas. So I got The Dead Wake and Ordinary Grace for Christmas. So I wanted to put those on my list because sometimes I don't always read my newly anticipated or new additions, because I feel like I need to only read old stuff. So there's a good mix of new to my, TBR or new to my bookshelf, as well as things that have been there for a while. So anyways, that is my reading journal for 26 and 26, or oh my gosh, it is my reading journal for the year 2026. There are maybe some pages I'll add in at the end. I was looking at some people that did different yearly wrap-up pages, statistics pages that I think would be interesting to add in perhaps at the end of the year. But since it's the beginning of the year, I don't feel pressure to start them now. I could always figure that out in the next, weeks, months, and always add them in later. But for now, this is where I'm at for my reading journal for 2026. I hope you enjoyed looking at it, and maybe it gave you some ideas for your own reading journal. I love looking at other people's reading journals to get ideas because, I don't know, there's so many good ideas out there, and I think that this is my favorite part of, my reading journey, or it has been for the last few years, is getting to write it all down and mark it all down in my reading journal. So I appreciate getting to share it with you. Anyways, I will see you in my next video. Bye.